Good morning, everyone. We're going to reconvene an open session and begin with commissioners' reports. Vice President Baker, would you begin?
Just like to say that I hope everyone had a nice Thanksgiving vacation. I can see looking around that many of you ate a lot of turkey, and you don't have to eat much between now and Christmas. So be careful on your intake. But just hope everyone had a great vacation. Also, I did a lot of praying for the Slocum family the last few days. Rob Slocum, our former county administrator, I know his family's probably in much time of need and confused and all of that. So let's hopefully throughout the holidays we keep the Slocum family in our prayers. They're going to be much deserved and needed. So that concludes my announcement.
Commissioner Kiefer?
Yes, very nice, Commissioner Baker. Mr. Slocum and his entire family, good people, good people. I have a very positive story I would like to help share today. I have the honor of serving as the Commissioner Liaison to the Commission on Aging. And a couple weeks ago in one of our board meetings, it was shared with us a story of, I'm not going to tell the story, I'm going to let them tell the story, but of how some employees came to the aid of a fellow coworker who needed some help. And I don't want to mess anything up, so Amy, our Director of the Commission on Aging, would you like to come up? Should we go over by the flags or? Okay. Do you want your employees up here as well? Okay, let's bring them up and then we'll go take a picture. Okay. Which order?
So I just want to say thank you so much for taking the time to acknowledge my staff. And, we are very blessed that I feel like we have a workplace that's a village and that they take care of one another and they look out for one another. And, they certainly exhibit the ability to be tenacious and kind and serving, but not just the people that we serve, but serving one another. And the day that we had our groundbreaking for our fit lot, at the same time, one of my employees did not show up for work. And she is one of our very diligent employees who shows up early. And so her coworker was greatly concerned. And I'd like to call to the table at this time Beth Elliott.
Will she explain what happened? Or will you explain?
Yeah. So Beth works in the same office as Sandy, and Sandy too is here with us today. And Beth was greatly concerned that Sandy didn't show up for work, and so immediately started getting help to kind of figure out, where is Sandy, and Sandy's not answering her phone. And so in the midst of a large ribbon cutting and several community people and some important individuals from AARP coming to our event, in the midst of all of that, we are trying to figure out where our diligent employee is. And so Beth was extremely instrumental in trying to locate Sandy. In that process, she was able to help locate her husband with Sherry in HR and make several phone calls to find out where our employee was. And once we reached the spouse of Sandy, he was at work. We didn't know where he worked, so they were diligently searching on the internet for all kinds of places and making random calls. But long story short, they were able to locate him, and his response was Sandy was asleep when he left for work. And so he immediately left the house, or left his work to be met at the house by two of our employees. So I'd first like to acknowledge Beth for, really knowing her coworker so well that if it weren't for Beth reaching out and being so concrete and clear that she knew something was wrong, she had that feeling. So I just want to take time and thank Beth. And so if you want to read the
I
flag.
will read your certificate. Since the microphone isn't working up there, then we'll step over there and take a picture maybe all together. But let's see. A certificate of recognition presented to Beth Elliott. We, the Board of County Commissioners of Washington County, Maryland, would like to honor you for your heroism and for exhibiting courage, calmness, and clear thinking during a medical emergency involving a coworker. Your ability to assess the situation quickly and act immediately resulted in a life saved, and we'll have more of the story. We'll let that unfold here in a minute. Without your genuine care and concern, the events of October 18th could have been a very different outcome, and you have shown yourself to be a superior role model for all citizens, and I might add your colleagues as well. So thank you very much.
Thank you. So next I'd like to call up Jay Kelsh. So Jay has a background in corrections, retired from corrections, and we are so blessed to have Jay as a part of our team, bringing that sense of calm in an emergency situation. And we certainly knew that something wasn't right and that we needed to help respond to that location. We did contact the police and have a wellness check completed, to which they did not make entry, but they did not get a response at the door. So Jay and Sherry, which we'll bring up in a minute, actually went to the home to find Sandy in her bed, unresponsive. And so when they made entry into the home, Jay immediately was able to help secure her onto the floor so that life-saving measures could be completed. And so, having Jay be able to do that is amazing, and just be able to have that sense of calm, in that emergency situation. So
This certificate may be very similar, but it's certainly worth repeating. A certificate of recognition is presented to Jay Kelsh. We, the Board of County Commissioners of Washington County, Maryland, would like to honor you for your heroism and for exhibiting courage, calmness, and clear thinking during a medical emergency involving a coworker. Your ability to assess the situation quickly and act immediately resulted in a life saved. Without your genuine care and concern, the events of October 18th could have had a very different outcome. You have shown yourself to be a superior role model for all citizens, and again, your fellow colleagues. So, thank you.
Thank you.
Good job.
and last but not least, I'd like to call Sherry Mock. So Sherry is our human resource manager, and I don't think it's a time in an HR person's life where they think they're actually going to save someone's life as a part of the process. And, Sherry was very instrumental from the start when Beth came to help try to locate Sandy and her family. And very instrumental in that whole process while she's trying to help me at the same time get all of the things completed for the AARP event. So Sherry not only was instrumental in locating and helping to locate phone numbers and reach out to people, but also responded to the home with Jay. So Jay was able to give the support needed to get Sandy to the floor, and Sherry actually is the one who provided chest compressions, which ultimately led to that whole saving of life for Sandy, our employee. And so, I just want to say above and beyond, if there were such an award, I feel like our team really deserves that. That life-saving measure, I do require my staff to all be CPR and first aid certified and also stop bleed training. This is certainly one instance of things that have happened in our community where the training has actually saved lives. In our congregate sites, we have staff who have actually done the Heimlich and saved people before EMS got there. This is one where we saved our own. And so I just really appreciate the time that you took today to acknowledge the team and the fact that they...
Pardon to interrupt. One thing I'd like to do the next time, a presentation of this magnitude and importance, I would have liked it to have been an agenda item so we could fully recognize and have a pageantry or some recognition and further explore in detail the successes that you have on there. Wayne, I want to thank you for bringing this to the attention, but it would have easily been an agenda item to have you more time, because I have other citizens out there wanting to spend 10 and 15 minutes.
Sure.
And I can't praise y'all enough for what you've done and explaining what difficulty as caregivers I've just gone through this weekend. So I think we applaud all of you for doing that, but just to recognize in the future things of this length should be better as an agenda item so we can more praise what the outcome of this was. And even though the outcome was somewhat sad, but the steps that led up to it shows a formula for helping others.
And I think the outcome is that Sandy is with us today and showed up for work on Monday morning. So we are very blessed.
Thank you all
Well,
very
this
much.
deserves the time that it's due, so I'm going to read this certificate for Sherry as well. So the certificate of recognition is presented to Sherry Mock. We, the Board of County Commissioners of Washington County, Maryland, would like to honor your heroism and for exhibiting courage, calmness, and clear thinking during a medical emergency involving a coworker. Your ability to assess the situation quickly and act immediately by performing CPR resulted in a life saved. And without your genuine care and concern, the events of October 18th could have had a very different outcome. You have shown yourself to be a superior role model and for all citizens. Thank you very much, Sherry.
Thank you so much.
Thank you all very much.
Thank you again for your time.
Sure. All the participants with the certificates? Yeah, sure.
All right. Ready? 1, 2, 3. Good. Thank you.
I could never fill your seat, Court.
Commissioner Kiefer, does that conclude your presentation?
That does, and I apologize for the time it took, but it was very well
That's
deserved.
Okay, thank you. Always remember, you're welcome to have something important like that on the agenda so we can,
That's how it was decided to do it. So.
you're welcome. So that's what it'll be the next time. All right. Mr. Schmidt.
All I'm going to say is this week I'll be at the Mako Winter Conference, so hopefully we'll find out some more information about the Kerwin Commission and about the school funding bills, school construction bills that are going into Annapolis. So hopefully we can get some information on that, and I'll report back next time.
Any Like the medical assist thing,
There's actually two bills looking at one of them. I don't know if we've heard for the Medicaid is that on calls right now, a Medicaid call that they go pick up, go to a individual and they do not bring them back to the hospital, they get $0 reimbursed. They're looking at one where they'll get 50, so at least get something. So if they went out to did a call and in a lot of the scenarios it would give Narcan and they did something, but then that person does not want to be transported back to a hospital, at least given 50. And then they're still working on another bill on how they're going to implement the calls back to the hospital. So that has not been submitted yet.
thank you. Commissioner Wagner?
Morning. Had a couple points here. Had a couple of the employees bring to my attention that if Kirk and if we can work, maybe investigate it anyway, is on the transit center over across the street in your parking areas, there's a fence on the east side, but not the west side in that upper parking lot. And they thought maybe that'd be nice, I guess cost effective, there'd be a fence down the west side of that transit center. It gives, a little bit more security when they're coming in here, especially later night meetings, or generally they can park back here when it's after hours. But anyway, just something to sort of investigate. If I think we heard over the last couple of meetings about, if we're on our hiring process, I think Kirk and I did mention it to Kirk, and maybe Rachel's here too. Somehow I hope somebody's working on streamlining that process a little bit where it doesn't take 4 months to get critical personnel. So I just wanted that. I think you're looking into that, aren't you, Kirk?
We are.
Yeah. So maybe we can make things happen.
So what is the tentative timeline? Have you come up with any yet?
We could have a proposal back to you in 2 weeks or so.
Do we meet? What's December schedule look like?
I mean, 10th and the 17th.
Tentative timeline for what?
Takes 2 weeks to come up with it for the replacement of critical personnel. I would assume it's county administrator.
It's looking at the process as to how all personnel vacancies are filled.
I guess my point is if something shouldn't take 4 months. So we got
One
winter.
good example, operations manager, 911, 14 months. That was a critical position.
Right. We got snow coming and make sure we have all of our highway. I think of the highway, we're several short, just the bureaucracy of getting through the process. Maybe that needs to be looked at, but that's all I have.
Okay, thank you for your comments. I have 3. I'm going to congratulate Jamie Dick and the rec department. I was unable to attend due to some family issues Thanksgiving Day for the turkey trot, but again, another successful event and athletic endeavor, health endeavor for Washington County to sponsor scholarships at their college. So congratulations to Jamie and all those involved. Also would announce that the World Heritage Museum down on Sharpsburg Pike is having its Christmas open house Saturday and Sunday. Facebook and online information there is available for the itinerary, but I'm being assured Santa Claus is there again this year. I heard he wouldn't miss it, one of his favorite stops. And then I'd also like to congratulate Andrea Wyant, Andy, they call her, out at the Sheriff's Department. She retired with over 40 plus years of service to the Sheriff's Department. She once called her job the Sheriff's Secretary, and the event was well attended, and respect for her service was obvious by the amount of the people offering congratulations. So congratulations on a 40 plus year employee, Andrea Wyant. Thank you. That concludes my reports. I'd like now to go to citizens' participation, and we'll start in the front row. Oops, excuse me, staff. Thanks for the reminder. Staff. Krista, do you have any? Okay, my apologies.
The local management board would like to make a recommendation to appoint Kay Huffman to serve an unfulfilled term as a community representative from December 1st through August 31st of 2020. They would also like to appoint Tim Harrison to serve an unfulfilled term as community representative from December 1st through July 31st of 2021.
Commissioners, your thoughts, comments, a motion to approve?
Motion to approve.
Second.
I have a first and a second. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Krista, anything else? Before I begin, comments from the citizens, any other staff report?
Just a real brief. I wanted to express a sincere appreciation to our county clerk who took it on her initiative to prepare and bring a full meal in to the 911 center staff that were working Thanksgiving Day. So
There you go.
I know
David, I
the
heard
convers.
that, David, I heard that, I stopped in on a Friday and I heard that her, I think mashed potatoes and apple pie, or some kind of pie. Pineapple cheesecake was a hit. I don't know if you got any or not.
I did not get any, but next year, if you do the same, I'm going to be sure to come in and enjoy that. But the conversations around the floor have been well received and expressing appreciation for your efforts, and I wanted to make sure that that was formally recognized. And then likewise to the county administrator, and I believe several commissioners passed through there either just prior to or during the holidays to wish them well. Again, that's recognized and appreciated, and certainly Kirk, what job well done, and that's really all I've
I
got.
heard there's going to be a feather added to the turkey on the board of good things that happen at the call center.
Yeah,
There's
I'm sure.
Tradition out there.
Yep. Yeah, it should be well, but thank you.
Thank you, sir. Is there any other staff comments? Rachel, please introduce yourself.
Good morning, Rachel Brown, Human Resources Director. And in response to hiring, I am here today to ask for an official vote for filling 2 positions that we have open. The first one I'm asking for an official vote is regarding the Operations Superintendent role in the Environmental Management Division Water Quality Administration Department. This is a grade 15 step 1 position with an annual salary of $59,634. The reason for the vacancy is the retirement of Kim Bowers. It's a full-time budgeted position. It was advertised internally and externally. There were 31 applicants with 5 interviews conducted, 4 internal candidates and 1 external candidate was interviewed. And we recommend Monty Triggs to the position of Operations Superintendent. Monty meets all qualification for the Operations Superintendent position. Monty holds Maryland Water and Wastewater Superintendent certifications and has over 10 years' experience as a treatment plant operator. In addition, Monty and his team played a critical role in the total nitrogen reduction at the Smithsburg Wastewater Treatment Plant. Monty promotes team building and will be a great asset to the citizens of Washington County.
Commissioners, comments? Motion to approve?
Make the motion.
Second.
Have a first and a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye vote. Thank you.
And the second position that I'm asking for an official vote regarding is the Maintenance Superintendent position. This is also an environmental management position in water quality maintenance. It's a grade 15, step 5 position with an annual salary of $65,811. The reason for the vacancy is due to the retirement of Rocky Bishop. It's a full-time budgeted position. We advertised both internally and externally. There were 6 total applicants. 5 interviews were conducted with 5 internal candidates. And we recommend Scott Hose to the position of Maintenance Superintendent. Mr. Hose is the recommendation due to his current and previous experience with scheduling and managing construction jobs, organizational skills, people skills, consistent positive attitude, and his desire to manage the division as a team while utilizing the resources that are currently within water quality to provide the best possible customer service to the citizens of Washington County.
Commissioners, thoughts, comments? Motion to approve?
Motion to approve.
I have a first and a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Are there any other staff comments? Seeing none, we'll proceed now with citizens' participation. Anyone in the front row? Second row? Please come forward, state your name and address. And gentlemen, you're welcome to use time, but please remember those behind you.
Okay.
Thank you.
My name is Stephen McDonough. It's 16906 Pickwick Lane, Hagerstown.
Roger Vincent, 16845 Longfellow Court, Hagerstown, and
Brenda Jones, 17021 Burwood Court, Hagerstown, Maryland.
Okay. Gentlemen, thank you. I do appreciate the leadway you've given us in the past.
You're welcome.
Okay, but it is an important issue that may not be able to be held to 5 minutes, and I'd appreciate a little bit of leadway, because I think this is actually the last time I'm going to come in. I've
You're
said,
always welcome to give you a little leeway.
well,
We appreciate your
I understand you do,
consideration,
but
and thank you.
sometimes it just doesn't appear that any action is being done, although it does. If it is, it's being done slowly. But the first thing I'd like to say is, you know, out of the last 7 of the 9 weeks or 8 of the 10 weeks that I've been coming in, and any contact that I've had with anyone via email or phone and here in the council meeting, not a single individual has addressed this tax as it is titled. Washington County does not have a mobile home tax. Washington County's got an automobile trailer camp tax. And as written, it actually appears to be a campground tax. Anne Arundel County named their taxes mobile home tax. Baltimore County, tax on mobile homes. Howard County, mobile home site tax. Okay, and it tells you flat out that you're paying a tax or a rent for a space to have your mobile home in either a park or a campground. This thing reads like a campground tax. And when I mentioned it one time, Mr. Wagner asked the question about if the campgrounds are paying the hotel motel tax. Okay, and the answer at that time was yes. Okay, like the automobile trailer camp tax, it does not seem to apply to manufactured housing owners. The hotel motel tax does not appear to apply to people in their recreational trailers, in their motorhomes, in the tents, or anything. The motel hotel tax definitely says, without a doubt, that if it's not a permanent attachment to the earth, that space cannot be taxed. None of those items that I mentioned can be permanently attached to the earth or are. So we're paying it, either we're paying a tax or they're not paying a tax, or both of us are paying taxes we shouldn't be paying taxed. And Mr. Wagner, I apologize that I make you so tired you have to yawn, but
I'm not yawning. I'm
you
getting something out of my tooth.
whatever, you lay back in your chair, and I apologize if I'm mistaken, but you certainly gave that impression. But anyway, when we became interested in this tax, everybody thought it was just a mobile home tax, or not a mobile home tax, but a property tax that we were paying to reimburse our landlords for the space that we have. And that's not accurate at all. The first time I read it and got a copy of it, if I didn't consider it to be associated with mobile home tax, there is absolutely no way in my mind I would have associated that. And the fact that anyone in the administration in the county never refers to it as an automobile tax, automobile trailer camp tax, tells me that they're using the term mobile home tax, which is what they're using. And I'm concerned that when you're using that phrase or that description, that you really aren't taking the opportunity and the time to fully read what your law is. And I know it's not your law. It was established in 1963, forever ago. Lots of things from 1963 are not allowed anymore. And I consider this tax to be one of them. But anyway, our homes are personal property, so you're definitely not taxing our property. You're taxing the space that we're filling. The space that we're filling. There's no mobile home or manufactured housing in Washington County that exceeds 2,000 square feet. That means that we're paying something like $2.2 million in real property tax assessments for 21 lots, which is less than an acre. Okay, I know I've talked about 1/10 of an acre before, and it costs them $107,000 in real property tax value. And like I said, that was a real property tax, and I was really lenient with it. But if it's a space tax, it's the space that our homes are taking up, and it's 1/21 of an acre, and we're taking and paying that tax. Okay, the tax we didn't have any issues in, established in 1963. They changed the law and the way that the assessments were assigned for real estate for the landlords. Okay, instead of taking and biting the bullet then, they decided to institute this tax, to transfer the burden from the landowner to the residents. We are actually tenants, we're renters. We pay our taxes, we live in a community, we do everything that everybody else does that's a renter in the county. However, we get hit with an additional 15% tax, which, by the way, I noticed on the agenda and the paperwork that the tax that we're charged here in Washington County, okay, generates more than 4 times the value or the percentage of the gross receipts of the counties, of the other counties that are reporting it. Okay, it says they were reporting 3% of their total revenue. They're reporting 6% and 6%. While you're reporting 0.24%, and I should say it was 0.06%, 0.03% for those, while you're generating 0.24%, 4 times the income on $935 homes in the county. I don't know how many homes were in the other counties, but it just seems like it's totally disproportionate. Also on the agenda, it says you're generating between $550,000 and $600,000. That number is actually $600,000 to possibly $660,000. Okay, if you look at the agendas or the last spreadsheets, you'll see that the dollar values there are from last June. Several parks, including our own, have had rent increases. Every time the rent goes up, the contribution to the county goes up. And I'll have to say that most of the communities have their rents done every year. If it was actually a real property tax that you were putting on to us, it would only be every 3 years. So ours is going up every year with a rent increase versus 3. And that's probably why you're at that point where you're actually 4 times over most of the others' revenue being generated.
Can I ask you a quick question? You had mentioned real property tax. So if your home was paying, your personal home that you live in now, if you were paying real property tax on that home right now, what do you think your amount would be?
My home? Mm-hmm. $25 a year.
I don't mean to laugh.
I'm serious. I'm dead serious. Okay? I purchased my home 3 years ago.
Okay, so what are you currently paying?
I currently pay $800 a year.
Okay.
Can I ask you, where do you get that $25? Because at 1%.
Oh, it's $1 per 100, right?
Yeah.
Okay. I found a decent home for $2,500 3 years ago. And I want you to know that in 2 more months, I'm going to have paid the county in taxes as much as I've paid for my home. Most of the homes in these communities are older homes. The parks have been established since the 1950s and 60s. They really don't do much. You know, about the only way anybody moves a trailer out of it is once it's burned. That's a hard way to say it, but that's how it is. Okay?
So what would your book value, if you don't mind me asking, if you tell me it's none of my business, I'll
Go ahead.
be okay with that too. the book value on your current home. Do you have a book value?
No, they don't go back that far. Okay?
Thank you.
Now, the parks are such, they've been taxed since 1963. They're considered mobile homes. In the meantime, HUD's established criteria in 1976 that did away with mobile homes and trailers. They're considered manufactured housings now, okay? Not trailers, not mobile homes, manufactured housing. HUD recognizes the fact that they have axles, wheels, and trailers on them for ease of manufacturing and ease of transport.
I have a question I'd like to ask you. What do you, I don't know if I've heard this or not. What do you think your taxes should be? What do you think you should pay a year?
0 is my answer.
Well, how do we pay for our services in the county?
Well, gentlemen, we reimburse our landowner for property taxes like any other renter does.
But
Okay,
I
how
don't know
does
of
any-
anybody that pays
how-
0.
How do you know this?
School buses, sheriffs,
No, I'm
fire
not-
trucks.
Hey, it just happens to be 0. How much do you tax renters?
He's asking about the 274.
Yeah, hey, I don't mean to interrupt and be polite. I've got you 10 minutes. Could you sum up some comments so we could yield to your other
Okay.
guest? Okay. Thank you for that understanding.
I'd like to mention that if you do anything other than repeal this tax, what you've essentially done is established a minimum tax that's required to be paid by anyone in the county. Not just mobile homeowners, anyone in the county, any renters, any tenants. You're effectively establishing a minimum tax that needs to be paid. And I just wondered how, if that's the case, and I'm sure it is, okay, at least in my eyes, if you're going to go back and audit every rental property and make certain that they're contributing at least $274 a year in taxes. Okay, and if they're not, you're going to bill them, you're going to let them go. How are you going to do this? It's totally not fair. This tax is being applied to only mobile home parks and no one else in the county.
Thank you for that summary.
Okay.
Sir, would you go next?
Okay,
or-
I'd like to answer your question there for $274. That is the property tax that we pay that's inside of our rent, that's apportioned out for the whole year. And that pays you the $274. So we're not paying 0, we're paying 274, okay? So we are paying for our services.
Commissioners, I just want to remind everybody, this is for you to make comment.
Okay.
You all have the right to ask questions.
Right.
I don't deny that, but
Sorry.
please go ahead one more, but that's, I'm going to keep the order of the meeting going on, so everybody.
The one thing I've said this before, and I want to make sure, is that property, unlike an apartment or a rental property, it's being taxed with what the assets are of that property, not with all the trailers on it. So if you threw all those 511 trailers on it, and you counted that as a property tax, then the property value would go up, and then the property tax would be higher. And so it's not being taxed as a complete property.
You just confirmed what I said.
Yeah, we
Okay?
have,
You've transferred the burden of the tax from the property owner to the tenants.
For
Yeah.
that trailer.
Is it
correct.
fair?
Yeah, I agree.
so
Please continue.
we are opposed to this tax, as you can tell. We are opposed to any percentage tax. The reason we're opposed to any percentage tax is because Lakeside Park and all these other parks can also raise the rent every single year. They have the right within the state to do that. And they do it regularly. They don't miss. We have not missed, I've been there 15 years, have not missed it once. So on a percentage tax, it goes up every time that the rent goes up. So you get more money every year and have gotten a lot more money. From me personally, you receive $250 because that's what I paid when I start. Now I pay $510. Okay? The difference is the rent and the tax. All right, so $66 of rent or tax, if you reduce that to a reasonable amount, like 0, okay, then we would be very happy. If you want to charge some percentage, we would be very unhappy, and we'd be back here again saying hi until you undo it. You get tired of us. We would like you to see you cut it to a reasonable amount with no percentage, flat amounts if you do flat amounts. Thank you.
Well, this is the first time I've come in front of you all, but
May I
I've
interrupt?
sent,
I need your name and address
oh,
again. I'm
Brenda
sorry.
Jones,
Okay.
17021 Burwood Court, Hagerstown, Maryland, Lot 148. I've lived there for 5 years. When I went there, it was myself and my husband, and in the time I've been there, he passed away. So now I'm down to one income. And this tax is a hardship. And I feel as though it's unfair that we're paying it for Lakeside. My lot rent goes up every year. I pay my lot rent every month. I have no issue paying that. I knew that when I went in there. I did not know about this tax. It was a hidden tax. And these gentlemen found it. And you all didn't even know about it the way I'm understanding. So what has been going on with this money? You know, this money could go for me to pay my medical bills, for my medicine, and so forth. And I would really appreciate you all thinking really hard about it and getting rid of the tax for us.
Thank you very much. Appreciate you being here, ma'am.
Thank you.
You're always
May I have
welcome.
one last sentence?
Yes, sir. Please do.
Okay. Later today, Mr. Downey and Ms. Greaves is going to give a presentation on the revenue and everything. I'd just like to add that if in the other 3 counties that repealed this tax, I'm not certain if they're going to void, well, actually, I know they have. They've given us options on this tax, okay? In the other 3 counties, the treasurers, the CFOs, the COOs, and everyone objected to the repeal of this tax. But I will say that the commissioners had the courage to take and repeal it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
What are your thoughts on this?
They don't need to share them with you.
This is really as comments time, and this agenda item will be later on today in discussion, as he just mentioned.
Okay.
Mostly this time is really limited to 3 minutes, but the seriousness of the nature and your interests, I wanted to make sure you all weren't inhibited or stopped or felt you couldn't have your full say. So really, this is not a back and forth exchange. I wanted to be very polite about that.
I've never been here
And
before,
well,
so I thought I'd ask.
I applaud all 3 of you for your interest in government and running and doing things, so thank you for that.
Well, thank you.
You're welcome very much. Are there any other citizens who'd like to come forward? Please come forward, state your name, sir, and address. Thank you.
Good morning, members of the County Commissioner. My name's James Devine, Post Office Box 2217, Hagerstown, Maryland. The first speaker spoke for approximately 14 minutes. I won't ask for equal time.
Well, thank you for your appreciation and understanding of that.
But I would like to have different subject matters I would like to talk about. I saw this thing in the newspaper talking about the solar project. Years ago, twice, when this body was upstairs, I came before this body and spoke about the need for regulations for solar energy in this area. And they could be parabolic collectors, they could be windmills, they could be solar panels. I have a book here that talks about the solar energies. You know, if you're interested, I'm ready to return it to the library. I suggest one of you check it out and look at it, because there needs to be rules and regulations set in this county that people can adopt into the solar energy program, and especially farmers. I think farmers should, the zoning should be redone to help the farmers. You know, the dairy industry is going down for prices, but there has to be something done in this area. And you say you said it to the Planning Commission. Who's going to educate the Planning Commission on the different things? And where are the regulations for DC wiring in homes? Where's the regulations for extra structure and roof designs? You know, where's the regulations for putting a windmill in your backyard? These people that say these solar projects hurt their eyes, they should either have their eyes or their head examined. Because these solar projects, and I have something here that I'm going to submit. It talks about the rising sea level in 2050. I don't know how many of you are going to be around 2050. Your children going to be around? You know, but this talks about the rise of the sea level that's taking place. There's global warming taking place. I look at the solar projects as the electric cars are going to take over. People are going to have these solar electrical producing things on their property to recharge their vehicles. You're never to have to buy gas again. You know, and there should be rules and regulations set out by the county that allows this and allows the interconnection, you know, into the electrical grids. And when I go up and speak to you 2 years ago about the matter, nothing happens. Nothing's done. And then I read in the paper, well, you know, it's going to have to be put in a planning commissions. There's a lot of taxpayer money spent on arguing an issue that should have never been argued in the first place. You know, the rules should have been set in place years ago. You know, and I'm concerned about the Potomac River down here because the plant across in West Virginia is taking excess water out of it, and I've talked before about the chemicals in the Potomac. You know, all the medication you take is in the Potomac, you know, and it's not being filtered out. Well, it can be filtered out, but at a very expensive rate. You know, so I'm concerned that, you know, when this company takes out excess water, all these chemicals are going to be increased in their content. You know, but you know, you need somebody that's an expert in the electrical field. You know, where's Mr. Barr at? Well, Mr. Barr's not here because he changed the last initial in his name to I. You know, he didn't keep it as an R. And I think that's a shame because the Republican Party has been politically driven by falsehoods, bogus theories, fiction as facts, propaganda as journalism, and fellow citizens that oppose them as human scum. And even evangelical Franklin Graham says that anybody that opposes the Republicans or this president are demonic. That's sad. That is a sad situation. But that's what you and your party represents. I think Mr. Barr is the most honorable person of you all because he chose not to sell his soul for the price of the political party. Once you give up your integrity, it's not hard to vote to be a Republican. You know, and I think it's a shame the way the politics have been going. You know, when you look at the whole thing that's going on, but I also have something here about the evolution of the humans on this planet. The planet's been here 4 billion years. Solar system almost 14 billion. You know, but the planet's going to be totally destroyed unless there's things done, you know, to help the planet. But the solar thing is something that should have been addressed years ago in this county, and it's not been addressed. You know, and I think it needs to be addressed. A subject matter quickly I'd like to talk about is the Heller Gas Company out here on Route 40. There's high tension power lines above that company. If those high tension power lines broke down on that gas company, there would be an explosion that would leave a big hole out there. That needs addressed. And then I think the last issue I would address would be the Community Action Council up here. I'm asking that any funding from the gaming commissioner be excluded from them until they change their policy. Their policy is, I'm homeless. I go in there for a food stamp card. They will not give me a food stamp card or food bank card because I'm homeless. A food bank card to go get food at one of the distributors once a month. They will not give me that. And I've had a post office box in this area for over 30 years. But they will not provide a food bank card to people that do not have a physical address. The post office box they will not accept. So I cannot get food at the food banks. I cannot get food at the Hope Ministry up the street here. And I think it's wrong. And I'm asking you to withhold the money from the gaming commissioner until they change their policy on the matter. You know, it needs to be addressed not only for me, but for other people. You know, I have a stove, refrigerator, microwave. I can cook, you know, but they're not providing me any of the food, you know, because they say I don't have a permanent address. And I'd like that to be addressed by the county commission. And Mr. Klein, I brought up an issue of you with the Maryland Theater down here, and I was wondering if you ever looked at that issue.
Could you refresh your request?
Well, it had to do with the facade on the front of that building. There's metal block clips that come out.
Yeah, I'd some. Okay.
Did you see them?
I haven't been down, wanted to go down, so you're going to take my apology on that, but I want to go look at them, so I'll get that done.
Okay, but those metal brick clips tied in with the facade.
It's in the walkway
In,
between
with
the
the,
buildings.
with the two walls,
I
and
remember.
there's commercial and residential masonry work. They're two different areas. A commercial block work requires those two little clips to come in and hook into the facial work. What they did was shoot brick clips, which is like a little piece of corrugated metal, into the block wall, and then tie that into the face of wall. That's residential work. It's not commercial work. I'm not sure whether it even meets codes. You know, but I think that's, you know, if there was another earthquake in the area, the whole wall might come down.
I see Mr. Hobbs in the background. Is that something you could check on? Rich? Okay, get back to me later on that.
A lot of the commercial can now use residential style, and it would have been designed by the engineer, so we'll take a look.
All right, thank you. Thank you for your reminder, Mr.
Okay, I
Devine.
wanted these two papers, the one for rising water, because the county ain't taking advantage of the Amazon people down there in their area. I also see the airport, why you don't publicize more at the major airports for air traffic in this area.
Thank you, sir.
Okay, thank you.
Is there any other citizens to participate? Okay, seeing none, we're going to move the agenda a little forward to accommodate Chief Laura and Department of Emergency Service Dave Hayes. Would you please come forward with your fire rescue AMS mutual aid report? We're doing that a little bit of time constraint for their time and trying to accommodate them on their schedule today.
Mr. President, I thank you for the accommodation for the schedule today. I have to leave immediately and head back down to a training in Reisterstown, so I very much appreciate that. So we're here today. You've heard this before in previous presentations. Chief Lohr, Hagerstown Fire Department, David Hayes, Director of Emergency Services. We're here to bring, hopefully, a finality to Memorandum of Understanding for Fire and EMS, automatic and mutual aid services, both within and outside of the city of Hagerstown, understanding that there are two separate jurisdictions that govern both of those. So the report in brief, we're looking for a motion to adopt the Fire Rescue and EMS Automatic Mutual Aid Memorandum of Understanding, further known as MOU, as presented between the City of Hagerstown and the Washington County Board of County Commissioners. The resolution RS 2014-17 establishes that the Board of County Commissioners serves as the authority having jurisdiction over all matters involving fire rescue and EMS in Washington County. Additionally, the City of Hagerstown, being a sovereign municipality, has provided within its charter the obligation and responsibility to provide fire protection to its citizens within the corporate limits of the city boundaries. In doing so, the city is recognized as the authority having jurisdiction for fire and rescue services within the city. The city employs a career fire chief and subsequent career staff to guarantee a specific level of service within the city boundary. The Division of Emergency Services and Hagerstown Fire Department have been working collectively over the past 2.5 years to develop this MOU. The MOU would formalize fire rescue and EMS services in each jurisdiction for which it serves as the authority having jurisdiction. Both agencies have solidified language and direction that meets the obligations of both the BOCC and the mayor and council, respectively. The MOU has been vetted through county, city, and the WCVFRA legal counsel with no stated objections in its current form. The Emergency Services Advisory Council has reviewed the MOU and offer its full support by unanimous vote on 11/7/2019. There is no stated fiscal impact. Concurrences are myself, the Hagerstown Fire Chief, the County Attorney, and the City Attorney. The alternatives are to not adopt the MOU and continue with the current verbal agreements, and the attachments are obviously the MOU itself. I just want to point out that the MOU is designed to address 4 basic categories that should be fundamental in everything we do, which is ensuring that it's a citizens first approach regardless of political boundary or jurisdiction, and that's the closest unit, and that puts the citizen first. It also states that the services are provided in kind, meaning there is no expectation for financial reimbursement for the services rendered. One of the more important things it covers is the liability coverage or responsibility for potential injury or something more significant. If a city worker was outside in the county or vice versa, a county employee or county volunteer was in the city, that those coverages are understood where the liability stands. And then just as importantly, it states that we make sure that we cover ourselves for a NIMS requirement, which states that we're going to establish an incident commander on every incident, and that can be anywhere from the right front seat rider and the first arriving engine, assuming the responsibility for command and control, to a formal establishment of incident command and declaring who that officer might be and it being operated on a more complex incident. It also addresses if those incidents are complex and expanding, what that incident command structure should start to look like. And again, all of that is described and governed in the federal NIMS compliance guidelines. So I'll turn it over to Chief Lore if he has any input, but our recommendation is to adopt as written.
Thank you, Director Hayes. Nothing to add. The ARF is well prepared. I'd simply like to thank particularly Kirk Downey, who had lion's share of work in this thing on the county attorney side, and remind the commissioners that in addition to the four things that Director Hayes articulated, we agree to fundamentally send the closest appropriate resource to any citizen's emergency. That's a big step forward. I think this document demonstrates that when we all work together and the tide comes in, all boats will rise. Mayor and Council approved this last Tuesday night in the city with a unanimous 5-0 vote. I would simply request the commissioners do the same and formally adopt this today. It's a step forward for fire rescue in Washington County and the city of Hagerstown. Thank you for your time.
Just a comment, what I'm hearing is the city and county putting the citizens first for their public safety. We'll worry about all the other stuff later.
Absolutely.
I applaud you and thank you for that.
I do want to add one additional comment. I spoke to the president of the Volunteer Fire and Rescue Association, and obviously they have had this document in multiple iterations to include the final draft, and he is in agreement that we have addressed the one outstanding issue, which was in Section 7 of the document successfully. So they have no outstanding issues as well.
I'd motion to approve the automatic mutual aid firefighting rescue and EMS agreement.
Okay, I have a first. Is there a second?
I'll second.
First and a second. Is there any discussion? Hearing none. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? 5-0. Thank you very much.
Excellent. Thank you very much.
Putting the citizens first. Thank you. And we'll get back to our agenda. Okay, I think we'll have to have a public hearing. Is that what? Yeah. All right. Back to our regular agenda. Relief without prejudice. Brandy for the bid award for fire service performance testing. We have Rick Curry. Please introduce yourself for the record.
Good morning, Rick Curry, Director of Purchasing. Unfortunately, Brandy is not feeling well this morning, so I'll be sitting in for her. First subject for you is to relieve without prejudice the contract award for bid PUR 1431 for fire service performance testing, inspection of fire hoses, fire pumps, and ground ladders. Basically what this is that back on July 30th, the board awarded the contract to Fire One of Drexel Hill, Pennsylvania for option 2, and then upon that award, it was contingent that the bidder would register with the Department of Assessment and Taxation. They were given an amount of time to do so, and the department was informed that the bidder wished not to do so. And in doing that, we are asking that we award the contract to the next low bidder, who is Waterways of Southwest Pennsylvania, LLC of Bethel Parks, Pennsylvania, in the amount of $60,985 for option 2, which encompasses groups A and B for fire pump testing and hose testing.
Commissioners, any questions? I didn't It's our budget.
Motion to recommend the recommended motion.
Have a first, is there a second?
Second, quick question, is this for both to relieve the contract and submit the new one? Or
Yes,
accept
it
the
is,
second one?
it is to relieve and also to award to the next bidder.
Yep.
Okay, I have a first and a second. Any other discussion? All those in favor as presented, say aye.
Aye.
5-0, thank you very much.
Thank you. Thanks, sir. Thank you, sir.
Next up, I guess, welcome back.
Hey, no, she's sitting there. Again, Rick Curry, Director of Purchasing, Terry Hill, Washington County Sheriff's Department. Subject bid award PUR 1442, paving repair at Washington County Sheriff's Department Detention Center. Move toward the contract for the paving repair work at the Washington County Sheriff's Department Detention Center to the responsible bidder Craig Pavement Corporate of Hagerstown, Maryland, who submitted the lowest sum bid of $118,484. The bid was advertised. We normally do it in the various medias. The work will entail paving, repairing, patching, removing weeds, and is approximately overlaying 10,863.49 square feet of asphalt and line striping. And funds are budgeted in the department's CIP budget, as you can see in the ARF. And also you have the bid tab from the bidders that submitted for the project.
Make a motion to approve.
First, is there a second?
Yeah, I made a motion.
Second. Any other discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? 5-0. All right. Thank you.
Again, Rick Curry, Director of Purchasing, Danny Hicks, Operations Supervisor, Parks and Facilities. Move to authorize a resolution to Parks and Facilities Department to purchase playground equipment from Miracle Recreation Equipment Companies of Monet. And I have a typo error there that it should be Missouri, not Mississippi. And to utilize Sourcewell's contract number 030117-LTS in the amount of $179,714. The Code of Public Laws allow this body to participate in contracts that were awarded through other jurisdictions. We feel that this is the best option for the county to take advantage of the savings under the Sourcewell contract. Playground equipment will be replacing equipment at the Hagerstown, at the county's regional park, which is located out near Black Rock Golf Course. And as you can see in the fiscal impact, there's $242,000 in the capital CIP budget, and funding source, which is 90% open space project monies with a 10% match. We have concurrence and alternatives if the board wishes not to go through with awarding this contract.
So real quick, the total amount of $179,714, is that the 10%, or we're only paying 10% of that amount?
We'll be paying 10% of that amount.
That's what I thought. Okay, so it's only costing the county $18,000, which we have $242 in that.
Yes.
Okay.
Just for clarification for the record, the 242 that we have budgeted assumes 90% state and 10% local. So that 242 is 24,200 local.
Okay.
Gotcha. This is certainly a project that qualifies for that POS funding.
Yep.
I'll make a motion to approve.
First, is there a second? Any discussion?
What are we doing with the old equipment that's out there?
It'll be put on Gov Deals.
Okay.
Any other questions? First and second, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
4-0. Please note Commissioner Baker left the room momentarily. Thank you.
Again, Rick Curry, Director of Purchasing, along with Garrison Plessinger, Director of Hagerstown Regional Airport. Subject before you is a change order request for repair of an airport firefighting vehicle. Move to approve a change order request in the amount of $42,246.44 from the following account of 45-45080 to utilize to cover the cost of the repairs of the firefighting equipment. Back on May 17th of this year, the board approved the firefighting vehicle to be repaired at $59,371. The specifications, scope of work for this vehicle was written with the unknown fact that there were items in that bid, on that piece of equipment, that would not be able to have an assessment done until the vehicle was torn apart and analyzed to see what all was done. I will say that with Garrison and my department, we have went back and forth with the vendor to reduce the overall cost of what was originally submitted. I think it was like over $10,000, what we actually saved in Total County to get the cost down to this $42,242.44. We're asking that the board approve this change order so that the airport has a fire crash vehicle for a backup on emergencies if needed.
Commissioners?
Since it's budget in your CIP, I'm assuming you're taking something away in your CIP budget?
No, so it actually is, the funds are available in that budget line item. I believe we transferred over 145,000 for the bid. The lowest bid was 59,000, so with this change order, right over 100,000.
I make a motion to approve.
First and a second, any further discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? 5-0, thank you.
Thank you.
Next up is the public hearing. Strykerberger, will you introduce yourself and introduce the subject? And I believe there's no oath for anybody in this public hearing required for this one.
Good morning, Commissioners. Rich Eichelberger, Director of Construction. I have with me Frank Quillen, who is our Chief Plans Examiner and also Deputy Code Official, and Ashley Holloway, who is the Director of Plan Review and Permitting. This will affect all three of our staff, so that's why we're making a joint presentation. Presentation today is for public hearing to for the purpose of considering repeal, enactment, and adoption of the above referenced codes, ordinances, and resolutions. The list is the first part of the ARF, which is all the codes and ordinances that we currently enforce. The 2018 building trade and code adoption as required by the state of Maryland includes the state building performance standards and Washington County local amendments. Local amendments allow for some modifications to the new codes for consistency and coordination with customers as well as external agencies. Effective March 25th, 2019, the Maryland Department of Labor License and Regulations, DLLR, now the Department of Labor, adopted the International Building Code 2018 version, also the International Residential Code 2018 edition, and the International Energy Code 2018 edition, as modified by DLLR and revised 2018 Maryland Building Performance Standards, and the additional codes of the existing building code, International Mechanical, Plumbing, and the 2017 edition of the National Electrical Code. All localities within the state of Maryland are required to adopt the state adopted codes with or without modifications. As part of this process, it would be necessary to repeal any existing resolution or ordinances associated with permit fees and civil citations and adopt a new resolution or ordinances that reference the adopted 2018 building and trade codes. These codes were thoroughly vetted by a code review committee for the building, which the BOCC had approved previously. Also, the Washington County Plumbing and Mechanical Board, along with the Electrical Board of Examiners and Supervisors, have all given their approval for this to move forward. At this time, we had only had one request for copies of the adopted or the proposed codes, and no questions were received. They were listed on the county's website and were available. So at this time, we'd like to request that this be moved forward for adoption.
Commissioners, comments, questions?
So it says recommended motion NA. So are you looking for a formal motion today?
Yes, I'm sorry. That should have been filled in, but
And these changes required by the state of Maryland, so essentially we have no choice.
the state has adopted the codes. They do allow the local jurisdictions to make some modifications to. So as long as we either meet or exceed what they have adopted, we would be compliant with state requirements. So that's where we are. And there are some changes to the code this time. Most of them are minor in nature, very minimal in financial. In some cases, it's savings, so it all weighs out. There's no major issues, no major changes, just like in the 2012, which was the sprinklers. So there's nothing like that.
Your request for a motion is, would you repeat that for the record again?
Is for the public hearing to be presented, and then for the commissioners then to repeal the current ordinances and codes and adopt the presented codes and ordinances.
Commissioners, thoughts, comments?
How often do you review this?
The state normally requires the adoption every 3 years.
And just a recommendation, maybe it's in here, it's a lot of paper. I'd just like to see a little bullet sheet of changes for Washington County only.
Like a summary.
Just something quick, easy to refer to, and I don't have to. It is for future.
Okay.
But you said
We'll
there's
make note of that.
minimal change and minimal financial impact on anyone. And in many cases, you said savings, or in some cases.
Have a motion to move forward for adoption, is that accurate? Or-
You got to close the public hearing, see whether there's anybody here to comment.
All right, thank you for the reminder. That ends your presentation. Any citizens' comments next?
Yeah, any citizens that wish to testify on proposed codes, resolutions should come forward at this time.
Seeing none, public hearing is now closed. Commissioners, thoughts, comments?
When's the proposed effective dates for these?
We're requesting that that they be adopted for January 1 of 2020 with full implementation of March 1st of 2020.
That's to give the building community time to transition. And learn
That's
the new
correct.
requirements.
For our staff to get up to speed, for the construction community to get up to speed, and we do plan to once we're approved, either late January or the first part of February, we will present or provide a community outreach meeting with the construction community to go over the significant changes to the code so that we can try to work hand in hand with them to get them up to speed as well as our staff.
Is there a deadline where the state says you have to have this updated by?
March 1st.
Okay.
Mhm.
So what happens if there's a specific area in there that there's a little bit of a cry out from the building trades community? Do we have the ability to go back and change?
I believe we could bring it back as a curative
There'd
ordinance.
have to be another public hearing.
Right.
Still bring something.
But there's an option available that something, an oversight or something wasn't acceptable, you have the ability to curative
Right.
solution.
I believe that happened. I believe that happened last time. Something small. I believe it was with Dex or something, if I recall correctly. So it could be accomplished.
The Code Review Committee had representatives of the building community on it.
Yes, representatives from the commercial side, residential, mechanical, also from one of the construction companies also is somewhat of a realtor as well, so that they have, it's a full mix. City of Hagerstown had a representative, architect as well.
Yeah,
I could move forward, but this is just me. I wouldn't have any problem moving forward today as long as I'm assured that we need to make an adjustment somewhere within there, providing we don't have to go through the state of Maryland or something like that there. I can support it.
We have that ability.
Yes.
Mr. Baker, is that a motion?
Yeah, I'll motion to approve or support.
We have a first, there's a
I'll second, and I'm assuming that it's to implement January 1st and then full implementation on March 1st.
That would be the request.
I have first and second. Any further conversation? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
5-0. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Next, expenditure of accrued payment in lieu of funds in accordance with the First Conservation Act. Jill Baker, please come forward, and Mr. Wibberly, welcome. Please introduce yourself and the matter.
Good morning, Commissioners. Jill Baker, Director of Planning and Zoning. With me today, I have Mr. Elmer Weibley, who is the Director of the Washington County Soil Conservation District. As many of you are aware, new development in the county is subject to the Forest Conservation Act, and we have a subsequent forest conservation ordinance that enforces that state act. As part of that, developers are required to mitigate their development impacts to our forest conservation resources. One of those methods that they may use is what's called a payment in lieu of. In some cases, it's just not feasible to handle forest conservation mitigation on site in the form of on-site retention or planting. So they opt to do a payment in lieu of, whereby the county then accepts funds and collects those funds and then eventually uses those funds to buy easements on properties where we feel we'll get the best and most efficient effect for the money that we collect. We have I think since the beginning of the program, contracted with the Washington County Soil Conservation District to do that work for us. So Elmer is here today to present you with several properties that we feel would be appropriate to spend this money on, and we're asking for your approval for that today.
Good morning. It's everything that we looked at was in your packet. This is a little different than what we've done in years past. We actually took the time and developed a ranking sheet so we could evaluate the attractiveness, if you will, of the sites as to whether or not they're a good forest stand. In the case of the ones we're looking at today, all of the recommended sites are existing forest. So we visited the sites with a DNR forester, the local county forester, Aaron Cook, evaluated the sites, and then based on the criteria we've established, and those ranking sheets are in your packet, we look at the watershed location, whether or not they're adjacent to a water course such as a stream or small creek, and the makeup of the forest stand, whether there's a lot of invasives to control and those type of things. So we ranked those out. We looked at a total of 6 properties for 5 different landowners, and recommended to the Planning Commission that we go forward with 4 of those properties at this time, hold 2 of those in reserve because they're not quite as attractive. And we do have other properties to evaluate in over the next couple of months. So we'll fold those other 2 candidates back into that and rank them in light of the other properties we're going to be looking at. So our recommendation is to move forward with purchasing the easements using the payment in lieu of funds for the 4 properties outlined for William and Heidi Bumpers, James Osen and Ann Aldrich, C.R. Semler LLC, Gary and Brenda Beachley for their Shanktown Road Tract. I'd be happy to answer any questions you might have.
I have a quick question, and the alternatives, and it says if the county does not expend the PIL funds in accordance with the Maryland Forest Conservation Act, then all funds collected must be returned to the various developers and must then expend the funds by finding mitigation options themselves. So by you only doing 4 of these, are we going to spend all this money? Sometimes it does not go back to the developers. Is that the goal?
Yes.
Correct.
Okay, and now is there a timeline that we have to expend this money before it goes back to the developers?
I believe it's within 3 growing seasons. The law just changed on that. I believe it's 2 years or 3 growing seasons that we have to expend that money.
Yeah, and that's from each development, so it's kind of like a rolling calendar.
Yes, each development submits a little bit of money, and as we accrue enough money to buy or place an easement on these properties, then we expend the money. Typically, even if we go over that time period, we do talk to those contributors and let them know that if they want their money back, they can, but when they find out that they have to spend it and find their own places to expend that money, they typically say, you keep it, you're going to find a better place than we will anyway. I don't think that's ever happened.
We've never had, we've been doing this since 1997. We've never had a developer request their money back so that they could go find a site to do the work.
And we do expend it in a timely fashion.
Thank you.
Yeah, I was involved in some of these rankings in the past with ag, on how you rank. You rank the same way as
Very
they do.
similar.
Yeah, very similar. You know, I'm fine with it. I think it's always done in a lot of scrutiny on the people who get the funds. They just, I guess over the years, I guess we just had a lot more money. We could help a lot of people, but we don't. So, yeah, I'd be okay with it.
Any other comments? There's a motion to approve. Recommended.
I'll make the motion to approve the expenditure of the PIL funds for acquisition and implementation of easements.
Second.
I have a first and a second. Any further discussion? All in favor, say aye. Aye. 5-0.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Next on the agenda is a public hearing scheduled for 11:30. We'll take a few minute recess to start on time to allow those who may be arriving late to be here. So I can just read this, Kurt, this is the correct one for anyone coming in.
That's not-
reconvene from recess. Next on the agenda is a public hearing for the application for zoning map RZ-19-004. The purpose of this hearing is to hear public testimony concerning the matter. The procedure is as follows. We will first have staff introduce the matter. The applicant will then have the opportunity to testify, after which the hearing will be open for public comment and testimony. Public comment and testimony is limited to 3 minutes. Lead way per speaker. After everyone who wishes to speak has done so, the applicant will have the opportunity for a brief rebuttal, because the applicant has the burden. The hearing and record will then close. No other comments, correspondence, or email will be considered. The commissioners may discuss the issue and take any action that they deem appropriate, including adoption or rejection of the proposal, or they may take the issue under advisement and deliberate at a later date. Would anyone wish to stand to take the oath?
Do you solemnly swear or affirm under the penalties of perjury that the responses given and statements made will be the whole truth and nothing but the truth?
I do.
And then if you could state for the record your name, please.
Good morning again, Commissioners. Jill Baker, Director of the Department of Planning and Zoning. As stated, we have before us today an application that's been made by JPK Properties LLC, requesting a zoning map amendment to apply a rural business floating zone district to land located on the south side of Brethidsville Road, approximately 2,800 feet west of Lappins Road. The parcel contains about 2.86 acres and is currently improved with an accessory building that they are using for storage purposes. Parcel is located in the rural area of the county as designated by the comprehensive plan and is currently zoned agriculture rural. The rural business zoning district has been established as a floating zone within the county zoning ordinance. This designation provides more flexibility than that of a traditional Euclidean zoning. As such, the applicants seeking to apply the rural business floating zone are not required to comply with the typically mandated change or mistake rule. Instead, the Planning Commission and the Board of County Commissioners are required to, in their deliberations, express findings that at a minimum consider the purpose of the proposed rural business zoning district classification, the applicable policies of the comp plan and the zoning ordinance, and the compatibility of the proposed rural business with neighborhood properties. In accordance with Section 5E.6 of the zoning ordinance, the procedure to create this kind of zoning district includes the Planning Commission and the Board of County Commissioners making a recommendation based on 6 points of interest. They include, number one, the proposed district will accomplish the purpose of the rural business district. The proposed site meets the development criteria listed in a separate article that include being outside of any designated growth area, having safe and usable road access, having on-site issues relating to sewage disposal, water supply, stormwater management, etc. be able to be addressed, and that the location of the RB district would not be incompatible with existing uses, cultural or historical resources, or ag preservation efforts. Number three, the road providing access to the site is appropriate. Adequate site distance along roads can be provided. The proposed landscaping areas can provide adequate buffering of the proposed RB from existing land uses in the vicinity. And finally, the proposed land use is not of a scale and intensity or character that will be incompatible with adjacent land uses or their structures. In their justification statement, the applicant contends that the proposed use of the property is for a storage facility for excavation and construction equipment, and that is compatible with existing land uses in the area. The business is expected to be mostly active between early spring and late fall to coincide with the typical construction season. Employees and customers of the businesses are not expected to use this site. In addition, the applicant claims that the structure to be built will be of the same size and style of the typical farm accessory structures that already exist within the area. This item was presented to the Washington County Planning Commission at a public information meeting held at their regular meeting on September 9th. It was then brought back for recommendation on October 7th, where the members unanimously recommended approval of the proposed map amendment. Just as a reminder, the purpose of this public hearing is to take comment on the rezoning application, after which the commissioners have the option to take action to either approve or deny the request, or to deliberate the issue at a later date. That's all I have for this. If you have any questions, or if you'd just like to go to the applicants.
I might have missed something. There's already a big building down there close to that, right?
Yes, they currently have an existing, I think, 4,000 square foot structure. I'll let the applicant speak to that when they come up. They currently store their farm equipment in that structure.
I'm sort of looking at it. So. Yeah, I didn't. So that would be across from it then, what they're proposing.
No, it's actually on their parcel. They have an existing structure on there.
Oh, because it'd be close to the existing structure they already using for farm equipment.
Yeah, they're proposing to put a second structure on the property.
Okay, next up, the applicant. Please introduce yourself. Thank you. And address.
Good morning, Commissioners. My name is Zachary Kiefer, 19405 Emerald Square, Suite 2100, Office 202. To my left is my client. I'll let him introduce himself.
Good morning, Commissioners. My name is Jared Keplinger, the owner of Keplinger's Excavating.
Please be seated. Thank you.
Commissioner Klein, I'm going to approach and hand out probably, I think this may help, or Commissioner Wagner may already be doing that. Sure. So what is being passed around is a photo of the current building that is on the property. I believe, and I wasn't a party, or I didn't represent Mr. Keplinger during that hearing, but I believe he got a special exception for that accessory building. The plan here, and why we're before you today, is to seek the RB business, rural business overlay, so he can move his business into the existing building and then build an accessory structure on the same parcel where he will store his farm equipment and the construction equipment for his business during the off season. Again, as Jill said, we're on Breathidsville Road. The property, the underlying zoning is agricultural rural. Really, the hours of operation and the intensity of the use are going to be minimal. Hours of operation generally of the business is Monday through Friday, 7 a.m. to 5 p.m. The nature or how Mr. Keplinger runs his business, though, is his workers show up on site. The equipment, starting basically in March or whenever the weather turns, the equipment is taken out and moved from site to site and doesn't make daily trips back to the property. His employees aren't coming back to the property. Really, his clients aren't even coming to the property. However, he will be running a business out of there with this accessory structure, and rather than try to skirt by and hope that no one notices and then ask for forgiveness at a later date, we're here asking for permission to have the RB overlay on the property and then allow Mr. Keplinger to build the accessory structure. I didn't make copies for everyone. One of them just came today, but I do have 3 letters of support from the adjoining property owners that were submitted. It should be a part of the record from the Planning Commission meeting, and then one today from Michael and Tracy Blair also supporting the application. They are not an adjoining parcel owner, and they were not at the Planning Commission meeting, so I will supplement with that.
You know how many adjoining parcels there are to that particular piece of property?
As the map, as looking on the GIS map of the county, I believe I submitted a list of 4, including one owned by JPK Properties LLC. if you'll see and you look at the map, it's sort of bordered on three sides by a farm owned by Veda Styles, I believe, right? So she sort of has the balance of the adjoining property. One of the letters of support is from Ms. Styles, so there's no opposition there from really the most effective property owner. As my application and the justification letter states, Mr. Keplinger also owns the other property. He's probably going to be building a house on it at some point in the future, so he'll also be the probably the second most affected property owner, and obviously in support of his application. But moving on to the criteria, which Jill touched on, this property, we believe obviously that it satisfies the criteria and warrants the placement of an RB overlay. It's outside the county growth areas. Breathinsville Road, for our purposes, it's certainly safe and usable from road access, site, and viewpoints as well. Again, really, there's throughout the year, there's going to be a minimal number of trips to and from the property. The equipment's going to be brought in and out essentially twice a year, once in, once out. And then, the farm equipment that will be used on the property, it's going to stay there. So again, I don't think there's really that much to be concerned about from a road access standpoint. The property, in connection with him building with Mr. Keplinger building the original building, a well's been drilled and a septic reserve area has been platted. So that's already there. I don't believe we're hooking up the new building, the accessory building, to water and sewer. So yeah, I believe again that the on-site water and sewer, or water and septic, will be fine. Stormwater management, this certainly can be addressed during the planning commission phase. We will have to go back and receive final approval from the planning commission, but if there's any concerns there, that'll certainly be highlighted by the planning commission. We also believe that it's compatible with the existing uses. As you can see, the building that's currently on the property, I would say, sort of matches and blends in with the rural nature of the surrounding properties. And I've also attached a copy of the proposed storage building, which is sort of your standard run-of-the-mill barn, essentially, I guess. I don't think there's anything too out of line about it as far as its place in the agricultural and the rural area of the county. There are, I believe, 3 historical sites close to the property, but with the adequate buffering and the distance, I believe the closest one's 500 feet from Mr. Keplinger's property. I think there's adequate buffering there, and again, I think we're going to blend in nicely with the surrounding neighborhood as well. The scale of intensity, again, I can't emphasize enough that this is going to be of a low scale and low intensive use. Again, the most effective neighbors and even some of the lesser effective neighbors have supported Mr. Keplinger's application. I believe there was one concern or one letter of opposition or concern about the road adequacy, but was sort of a general letter that was submitted after our public meeting before the Planning Commission. One point just to note, I believe the location of the proposed accessory structure is a little close to the side setbacks. So I think we're going to go back for a variance if the RB overlay is approved. So again, there's going to be an additional level of review and scrutiny of this as well if there are any concerns. That's really the long and short of it. If I miss anything or if Mr. Keplinger has anything to add, I'll certainly let
I
him
had a
do
quick
that.
question.
Yes, sir.
Jill, maybe help. The planning commission, when I was there the evening you were in on, they looked favorably, refresh my memory, they looked favorably upon Mr.
Yes, the planning commission has recommended approval.
Right.
Unanimously.
Okay.
Any other questions? Yes, we will now open the public hearing for public comment.
Thank you.
Anyone here for public comment? Seeing none, applicant, do you have a rebuttal for public comment?
No rebuttal at this time.
Thank you. Do the commissioners have any questions, further questions?
I would suggest we move on and approve it.
Okay, let me
To
close the
avoid any
meeting.
delay
Yeah,
to
let's
this.
close the public hearing. And meeting's closed. Wayne, please continue.
I make a motion to approve the zoning. Wrong page here, I'm sorry.
Actually, we'll come to a consensus to grant a RB Zone 2. We'll have to prepare the findings of fact and ordinance.
What Kirk said, I make a motion to approve.
Hey, very good.
So there's no delay for the end of the year.
Hey, thank you, Wayne. Is there a second for that? First and second, any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor?
Again,
Whoops.
Consensus. and
Consensus.
We'll bring it back with the documents that'll formalize
Consensus
everything.
to approve at a later date. Thank you, with the appropriate
But
document.
that gives us a direction as to what we need to prepare.
That's what Mr. Kiefer said, what Mr. Downey said. Thank you very much. All in
Motion
favor
is
for the
second.
consensus?
Aye.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Well, that's true.
Are we
That's
correct
good.
with the-
We're good. We know what to do.
Next on our agenda is the Washington County Mobile Home Park Tax Revenue Tax. We have Todd Hershey in the room along with Sarah doing presentations.
Good morning, Commissioners. Sarah Greaves, Chief Financial Officer, here with Todd Hershey, Washington County Treasurer, and of course, Kirk Downey may be weighing in also on this subject today. The mobile home park tax in Washington County has been a topic of discussion recently, brought forth by the residents of the Lakeside Park. At the November 19th meeting, a commissioner requested staff to look at revising the mobile home park tax to a different amount. The Washington County mobile home park tax has not been increased since 1963. The tax is charged to the mobile home park and is calculated from gross receipts multiplied by 15%. 6 other counties charge at least the 15% rate or higher. One charges 20%. I do want to offer a revision. The ARF says 16 Maryland jurisdictions, but I believe an accurate number is 15 Maryland jurisdictions impose a trailer tax. The purpose of me putting that in the ARF is to let you know Washington County is not alone in issuing a tax to a mobile home park. The tax is either a flat charge per space, ranging from $5 to $20 a month, or a percentage of the rent charged, ranging from 7% up to 20%. There are 3 counties in Maryland that have been part of the recent discussion that have recently repealed the tax. Those counties, Anne Arundel County, Baltimore County, Howard County. The percentages that you see on the ARF is the mobile home park tax as a percent of the general fund budget. The reason I show this to you is because it has been suggested that the county receives the same amount of revenue as these other counties did, kind of implying that it would have the same impact if we would repeal ours. However, we know that our budget in the whole scale is actually less than those other counties. So the impact to the Washington County budget is much higher, about 3 times higher. So that was the purpose of me putting that in there for you for consideration as we move forward. So there are 2 options listed in the ARF that were brought up for consideration. One was to change the tax to 7.5% rather than the 15%, which would have a fiscal impact of about $300,000. The other suggestion was to keep the tax at 15%, but then provide a cap on that so that it did not exceed $25 per month. That was much more difficult to estimate. However, an estimate for that would be approximately $318,000 loss in revenue. Something to point out with capping it and keeping it at the same percentage is that it could be viewed as a regressive tax. So that's something to keep in mind. I do have Mr. Hershey here, who I'd like to offer an opportunity to say a few words if he would like to.
I think you covered it pretty well. I guess the date is out there. I think you all have possession of that. I'd just like to make 3 comments before maybe open discussion. please understand that the residents of the mobile home park facilities are eligible for the renter's tax credit program. So if there's concerns regarding income, the state of Maryland will help pay part of those taxes or to be applied to your rent. And so we did some, I had the State Department of Assessments and Taxation do some research. And if your income is $15,000 or less, you would receive a renter's tax credit of $1,000. If your income was $19,000 or less, you would receive a renter's tax credit of $850. That's one time. That's for the year. So there are
Is that total income, or is that like adjusted gross income on a tax return?
That is your combined income from all sources. That's
Okay,
your
so
gross.
it could include Social Security, disability, wage.
That's
everything.
correct.
Okay.
Yeah. So there may be some benefit there for low-income situations. Secondly, it should be understood that these mobile home folks that agree to reside in mobile home parks, these are contractual agreements that people sign. Clearly there must be an understanding between the leaseor and the leasee that this is the amount of rent that you will pay. It may increase by this amount, and there's taxes in this amount. And so this is all understood up front. It's not something that's happened after the fact. It should not have if it's in accordance with the lease agreements that are signed by the occupants in the mobile homes. And finally, and I think most importantly, is if the commissioners do decide to adjust the mobile home tax, there is no assurance for the residents that they will receive the same subsequent reduction in their monthly rate. I mean, we can lower the tax, we can eliminate the tax, but does that mean that the mobile home operators will recognize what we've done here perhaps today and follow in the same course? They're my thoughts.
Yep, thank you. So right now, I think what provoked the meeting today was the suggestion by a commissioner to have an open discussion about the tax. So I'd like to see if the commissioners have any thoughts for staff, or if Mr. Downey would like to offer a few words.
Well, I mean, staff is here seeking policy direction from the commissioners. Obviously, in your agenda packet, there is the enabling legislation that state law authorizes a mobile home park tax. It sets the parameters for how that tax can be structured. There's been some discussion with the commissioners as to whether a new approach or different approach should be taken, or whether the rate should be changed. We agree with the residents that the language of the current ordinance is outdated, because I think it probably reflected the enabling legislation at the time it was written, and obviously that has been updated, and the automobile camping trailer ordinance has not since 1963. So certainly going forward, anything that was prepared would be in accordance with modern terminology as used by the enabling legislation. But obviously, to prepare anything different that takes a different approach, we'd like some direction as to what you'd like to see the final product to look like.
I would like to start as, I agree. I think the 50% tax is too high. And if you just look at the percentages of a current lot charging the $440 a month, that's, $66 on there, and it ends up being about ends up being $792 a year. And if you look at that, that's equivalent of an $80,000 trailer that they're being taxed on. If the tax was being assessed the same way that property values are being assessed, to get that same thing, they'd have to have an $80,000 trailer. I know I personally would like to see, I think it's going to be very difficult, but is the trailers be assessed as actual property and be taxed that way, so they're paying the same rate as everybody else. But I think that's going to be a very difficult upward battle, but it's something that we should at least ask our delegates. Knowing that that's not going to happen tomorrow, I do think we need to do something, because this tax is, I think, excessive.
Commissioners, any other thoughts?
I would also like to see a reduction, if not, maybe also an elimination. I think it almost seems as if there's double taxation going on here, that the land is being taxed, and yes, that's being paid for by the mobile home park owner, but that's of course being passed on to the tenants of the property, just like a rental house would be. But then this tax on top of that, I think it's very skewed, as Commissioner Schmidt said. These are not $80,000 properties. They should not be paying a tax based on $80,000 when the one gentleman had mentioned he paid $2,500 for his mobile home. That's sharply skewed. So I think we need to do something. I'm not a big fan of taxes to begin with, so I'm okay if we would scrap it even, but whatever the lowest amount we could agree to, I would agree to.
Yeah, my thought on scrapping is kind of what I've said before, is as an apartment, they're paying tax on the improved spot, on the improved building, where here, there's no tax being paid on the improved trailer. And that's why I said I personally would like to see the state assess it the same way. We know that's not going to happen tomorrow, so that's why I'm looking at this.
I'm sort of on the fence with any of it. You know, I'm from the firm school that my dad used to say there's two things you got to do in life: is die and pay taxes. And we have a lot of services out there that we offer to the people, a lot of services that we pay dearly for, and the citizens support. And I know renters don't pay, but it's built into some of the commercial tax base where the landlord and the owner pays a lot of, and I'm not so sure everything is based in this world off media price. I didn't see what the media price was out at Lakeside, but I know I've sold some anywhere from 50 to 80,000. So, you know, I don't have that information, so I'm not going to go there. Am I against a break? Possibly not. I'm definitely not anywhere close to eliminating. I just think it's every citizen's duty that relies on our services. They should pay some tax. So whatever you guys come up with, I'll, you know.
Sarah, I'm sorry. So Sarah, what do we have the ability to do?
In my opinion, and Mr. Downey can correct me if I'm wrong, but I think you have the ability to make any changes that you feel necessary.
Are we also allowed to, that tax credit that you mentioned, 15,000 or less in income, get a tax credit of $1,000 on this tax? Are we allowed to offer our own tax credit? So if that's what the state offers, can we double it?
There is no supplement for the renter's tax credit program. There is for the homeowner's tax credit program, which the county commissioners did in 2010, supplemented for low-income senior citizen.
They own their homes.
You did that, yes. But the renters, the renter's tax credit, they assume that 15% of the rent is going towards, and so anyone who rents properties all throughout Washington County is eligible for this credit if their income is along the same levels that I mentioned earlier. But we cannot supplement the renter's tax credit program.
Just $25 per month, it ends up being an equivalent tax of a $30,000 property.
What was that?
The $25 a month, if you look at that, you know, that's $300 in taxes, and if you say that's 1% approximately what our taxes, that's looking at as if it was a $30,000 property.
The only comment that I would make in reference to that is that whether they had an $80,000 mobile home or a $10,000 mobile home, everyone would be paying the same. Just for consideration for the board.
It's aggressive rather than.
Yeah, I understand. I also understand the residents' concern that if we drop it every year, it's going to continue to go back up, and we're going to be in the same spot in a couple of years.
So how many of these homes exist throughout Washington County? Do we have a concrete number on it?
Approximately like 930.
937.
There you go.
Occupied.
Yeah, there's 511 just at Lakeside.
Commissioners, what direction would you want to provide staff to explore?
I think if it's all right, the first thing is we need to make sure that we're looking at, talking to the delegation about seeing if there's a way that this can be taxed as property. I know it's going to be an uphill battle and most likely not going to win, but I think it's something we should at least look into. If everybody could agree to that.
A question I have, and correct me if I'm not saying this correct or interpreting it right, we could take action here, but mention that Lakeside could go around it. How do we prevent something like that type of inequity?
That's my greatest concern, is that they leave these monthly rents, whether it be tax or the total obligation for the residents, could remain the same. And for all the work that everyone went to get the tax repealed.
Would that fall in line then that we strengthen that with state legislation?
Yeah. The language should, originally the intent was, yeah, the intent was originally for the mobile home and operators to pay this tax and not the residents. It appeared on the monthly statements, 15 or so years ago, and but the intent of the legislation was for the mobile home operators to pay this tax, not the residents.
And then I'll just start. If it's all right for the commissioners for me to make a motion, unless there's any other discussion. But are we good?
Wait a minute,
Because one of the things that I won't make a motion. One of the things I want to discuss is I think if we do make this adjustment, we try to make it as clear as possible that this is supposed to be from gross receipts collected, not an additional tax. Like the ordinance says, it's from gross receipts collected.
Clarity like that would be helpful.
why couldn't we do a phasing? Why couldn't we phase something in? If we wanted to have a reduction, we wanted to agree on a reduction this year, we could assess it, come back next year and make another reduction possibly.
I'm fine with that.
What about when real estate is reassessed in value every 3 years? And isn't there a limit as to what the property owner would see as a jump in their tax bill? It won't increase.
Correct. Washington County Commissioners have set the homestead tax rate at 5%. The state of Maryland is still at 10%, which has been a source of frustration. But Washington County has set their rate at 5%, so assessment increases can increase more than 5% from one year to the
Could we
next.
do something like that as well to kind of limit the rate at which that might grow?
Dictating.
So meaning if the mobile home park owner doubles the lot rent from 1 month to the next, well, the tenant of that lot isn't necessarily going to see that jump double on their end, on their side. So they would be graduated in.
Yeah,
an extreme example, but
I'm thinking that's the set for the cap. If they double the rent and then the cap set at whatever that number is, that it's not going to go up even if they double the rent. The tax will go up.
What are you recommending staff to bring back to us for final approval or discussion?
I mean, personally, I'd like to see what Mr. Downey said is the verbiage updated, and I'd like to see that, see how we could move towards having a cap on the amount, and that this be taken from the gross receipts collected as it was intended, and not being an add-on tax to the residents. That's what I'd like to see.
Or is that something you can bring back to us for review?
What do you, excuse,
Good, Terry.
what do you pay a month again? For what? For your space?
Lot rent is $440 and $66 for the tax.
So you pay $66 a month in taxes?
Yes, sir.
Yes. On a $2,500 trailer? Yeah, it has to have something for me. It's gotta have something to do with the value of the home. Again, they shouldn't be paying, $66 a month on a home that's worth $2,500.
And that's,
I don't know if that, I mean, I'm taking his word on the $2,500.
I 100% agree, and that's why I was saying that $792 would be equivalent to an $80,000.
There's gotta be something that we can do to, as a county, to say, do we have values on their homes?
No, that's the point. They're not assessed because they're on rented property. Yeah.
Well, the homes on the rented lots have to be extremely limited in size anyhow because of the space that they're actually renting. And with all of the additional required law enforcement that we've been told that's out there at Lakeside, I mean, that certainly kills the value of anybody's home, I would think.
Okay, commissioners, what would you like to have brought back?
I don't know, I'm trying to come up with something that
I think that's what I was talking about, is we need to get state legislation to do that. But what I don't want is, I don't want to sit here and wait for that and still charge them $66 a month. That's my,
Is there a consensus on the percent for the tax? And is there a consensus on the cap of a dollar figure or a percentage? Because as we work through this, those are things that would be helpful if provided.
I think that's kind of the direction that we're asking you to come back with.
just to give it a range, $20 a month would be equivalent to a $24,000, and 25 is equivalent to a $30,000 trailer. And then I'll do the same thing. And then $30 is equivalent to a $36,000 trailer. Just so everybody has a range of what you're looking at, because there's definitely some trailers in there that are nice trailers. And I'm hoping that this is
Homes.
a home. I'm hoping that this is a stopgap, that maybe we could get assessments, but that's not going to help them out today or next month or the next 3 or 4 months.
Could we set a lower minimum on a single wide and maybe $10 and do 15 on a double wide? Obviously, a double wide would have more in value that way. I don't know if we can keep track of that, if that would be easy enough. I guess it would be for the trailer.
Self-reporting, yeah.
Yeah, to keep track of, not staff.
I'd have some concerns regarding the enabling legislation, because it's clearly says may impose a tax on the amount paid for the rental, leasing, or use of any space, facility, or accommodation in a mobile home park, or services provided by a mobile home park. So
Would that also go for a potential cap, since it's not referenced there? Would there need to be additional language in that enabling legislation? No.
I think I'd have less concern regarding the ability to impose a cap than I would to make a distinction between double wide or single wide, I think.
Could there be a distinction instead of on double wide or single wide, but on lot size instead? Is that possible?
I mean, there could be different classes of rent, I suppose. I mean, you could do 7% on the first $250 and, 10% on the next $250.
Yeah, so you, okay.
Tax the space, but you can't tax the trailer.
Yeah. So, I mean, I guess could you tax it by the size? So if I don't know what the size is, but if you had a size that's 10,000 and you had one that's 20,000, could you tax it 20,000 at $20 to the 10,000 at $10 or 15 or 25, whatever that number is?
You can do that. You can set different rates for taxing the space, but I don't believe you can set different rates for taxing the mobile home or the structure.
Oh, no, I'm talking about the size of the space. Because that's a way to get to a single wide and a double wide, and assuming you need a larger space to get a.
You just go down and take a tape measure and measure.
Yeah, that's it goes all back to, it's all self-reporting, so.
Yeah.
That's the problem.
All right, commissioners, what direction we're going? Sarah, do you know? I'm sorry, we can't really take questions from the audience. I don't want to get into that. Sarah, commissioners, what direction are you going through? I recommend.
Since the gentlemen have been here so many times.
Well, let's do that, but I don't want to break, I had this incident with a citizen before wanting to interrupt, and here we are going to do that. It has to be known that our policies is we do not communicate with the audience, but in this one case, I'll make if you're brief, please.
What I'd like to say is that the amounts, the sizes of the lots are not the same in Lakeside. The older side, where they have mostly single wides, are smaller lots. In some cases, they're bigger lots. And they're trying to put double wides in those single wide lots. The
side has all double wides with the exception of 3 lots that they just stuck in 2 big blue boxes. They're different size lots. It'd be tough to do it on size of lot.
Thanks for that input. And I don't want you to think I'm cutting you off. I'm trying to keep, I respect that you're being here. So these are things that you can email us to, because I don't think we're having a decision today. We're trying to put something to come back.
So you're saying, excuse me, you're saying 15 counties, when you say Maryland jurisdictions, you're referring to counties,
Yes,
impose a trailer tax.
that is correct.
So the remaining counties don't impose a trailer tax.
That's correct.
This, 'cause I'm not going to allow it.
So of those 15 counties that impose a trailer tax, you go over here, ours is 15%. What are
Yes.
the other 15 counties charging?
So 5 other counties charge the 15% as well. 1 county charges 20%. And then there's a range from anywhere from $5 to $20 a month. And then on the front sheet of the ARF, there are taxes from $5 to $20 a month, or percentages from 7 to 20% on the gross receipts.
Gross receipts.
Yes, like as our county does. So the tax is calculated based on the gross receipts of the mobile home park. So if they have 10 lots and they charge $400 a lot, then they take $400 times 10, they get their $4,000, and then the tax is being calculated at 15% of that amount, and that's what is remitted to the county.
Only governments and elected officials could make this so confusing. No one else. We got to get this simple. And for me, I guess the property owner, Lakeside, they're already paying tax on the property. I understand it's the home. First step is to try to get the places assessed. The other thing is get it down to a reasonable amount and end it. We can always come back next year and make an adjustment. If we don't lower it enough this year, we come back next year and possibly lower it some more after we learn more and get briefed on some other possible scenarios that we could do. So I don't think you can get any better than what Wayne said, $10 for a single and $15 for a double. I don't know how.
Because that would have to go through the delegation, that would take some time to implement. Is that correct, Kirk?
So what can we do then? Tell us what we can do. If we can't do that, why are we even discussing it? Unless we want to take that to a delegation.
Well, I think you can change the rate. You can impose a cap. You can.
Okay, so the
say
cap's
that's gonna be-
$10 a single, $15 a double. Per month, yeah. I mean, I'm okay with 0. People are taxed crazy anyhow. Every time you go to work, you get taxed every time. You can't do it. Look at all the taxes government has, everything.
Well, and just keep in mind from a finance perspective, this represents about $600,000 in revenue for the county that will have to be made up elsewhere.
With the tax increase though from earlier this year, that generated $8 million in new revenue, so just.
With the 5-year plan, though, that revenue will be taken up with fire and rescue costs, or is planned to be planned.
So we're just trying to correct something that should have never been to begin with.
I understand. I'm just trying to
Do you
provide.
have an idea what to bring back for us to review with all the data?
Maybe we come up with some more ideas.
If this went in today, would this new tax rate structure start fiscal year July 1st? Do we have to wait 6 months?
You can make it effective whenever you want.
Yeah, we would not have to wait. To get some paperwork out, of course, to the
Right.
30 or so mobile home parks, but
Information.
it can happen soon.
I guess I'd like to see the ordinance, find out if we can do a single double. If not, then come out with just $15. Look at that number, see the ordinance with all the updated information, all the verbiage and all that. And could we have that in 2 weeks for that meeting? I think that would be a good way, because then would it be possible if we did that we could make the ordinance effective February 1st, because I don't think it would happen, it's not going to happen by January 1st.
But we'd have to have information. We only have 2 more meetings this month.
Well, that's what I'm saying, is we get it, hopefully we'll be able to adopt an ordinance in December and make it effective February 1st.
You
You want the information next week.
It's possible.
Soon, yeah.
If we go to the following week, you know what's going to happen. We're not going to make a decision, and then we're going to be back here in January.
Hopefully.
What I'm hearing, I think we're gonna make a decision before December's over, is what I'd like to see done.
I mean, a couple of concerns. One, I'm not sure we can have it back next week because really it would have to be prepared to go into the agenda now.
Yeah, I think we can have it back in 2 weeks, and hopefully, if you could get the ordinance out to us before, so we can review it and hopefully come to a good consensus that that's what we like in 2
And
weeks.
if we don't, we can do it the first week in January.
But we're closed.
I mean, I'd recommend to you consider at least having a public hearing on the thing, which is what we would normally do.
Okay.
Makes sense.
So, but that, again, that pushes your timeline out.
Yeah.
We can, if you're good with it, and, when we bring it back in December, we can schedule the public hearing. Of course, we'll have to advertise, but we'll do that as promptly as possible, have the public hearing, and then you can act immediately thereafter.
Mr. Hershey, if we enacted, I guess, a new legislation, ordinance, how long would it take for it to become effective? I guess I would like to see it as soon as possible. What I don't also want is I don't want to put a burden too great on somebody else that they've got to redo all their paperwork and redo everything in, 3 days. So, I mean, what would be a realistic expectation?
What was this, a 60-day delay on the hearing? You take it to hearing, and then there's how many days? Do you have to wait for comments or things like that? I don't know. We can do it. We can do it within 30 days. I'm sure these folks will be on board with implementing in 30 days if we can reach them all. It's not that.
I think our budget was voted on the day of a public hearing.
I mean, the forms shouldn't take that much to update, right? The forms.
Right.
That would go out to the park owners.
All right, do we have direction enough for staff and everyone? Yes? Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Seeing nothing else on our agenda, motion to adjourn.
Second.
First and second, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.